as far as the Wolfgang rework is concerned, right? Here are the things that were laid out, and this immediately was met with a lot of backlash. So instead of being connected to his hunger, Wolfgang forms are now controlled by a new might meter. Filling the might meter requires Wolfgang to work out using one of his new craftable items. The meter goes down over time, and draining rate is determined by Wolfgang's hunger. The hungrier he is, the faster it goes down. I keep seeing a lot of people talking about this this update, this rework, and saying like, ah, finally, Wolfgang's not gonna be eating all my food in order to maintain his might. But I feel like they ignore the beginning sentence where they're like, oh, well, if his hunger's high, then his might is gonna decrease at a lower rate. So that doesn't solve that issue of like public server Wolfgang's eating all the food. You know, he's still gonna eat all the food. Like that hasn't changed. Wolfgang's linear values are now constant. Now, what this means, right? What this means? He is constantly gonna have 2 times the damage whenever he's mighty. It's either he's mighty, he has the double damage, or he's not. Which I think is a good fix, right? I think that's a good tweak, because prior, if Wolfgang was at max hunger, his hunger would slowly drain, and he wouldn't get the full benefits of the double damage. But like, it's fine. That's fine. So Wolfgang freezes and overheats faster when in wimpy form, but slower while mighty. I think this is a weird one, right? So what this means to me, right, is there's no reason for you to ever be wimpy, because wimpy form has no benefits. It used to be like whenever you were wimpy, your hunger would slowly drain. Will drain slower rather. But now it's just like, oh well, he's strictly worse. I think what would have been interesting was Wolfgang freezes slower when he's mighty, but overheats faster when he's mighty. I think that would be a good way to balance it, because like naturally when you're working out, as somebody who has been known to work out from time to time, right? Your heart rate increases, you know, you get blood flowing, and then like your body temperature increases. So having something that reflects that in game would be interesting. But I think wimpy form like just needs utility in some regard, because right now it's like never be wimpy. There's no reason for you to ever be wimpy, and like you're just always gonna have to work out as a result of it. When mighty, Wolfgang can carry heavy items faster. Let's actually see that real quick. All right, because I don't know the exact speed at which he does that. Hold on, let me what was the command? It was like free crafting. That was the one. Let's go ahead and make, hold on. Wait, we can't just manifest the statue, right? We gotta like actually have the stuff. I mean, I guess I could just console command it. Shift _ spawn statue. Wrong one. You know what? I'm just gonna what was it? It was like rook head or something. Or should I just actually I'm just gonna go ahead and craft this. I'm gonna do it the long way because I don't remember what the deal is. Yeah, let's go ahead and do ourselves one of these. let's just do God damn it. Yeah, I'm not accustomed to free crafting or any of super god mode stuff. Wrong one. And I guess now we can just let's test out the gem bell actually, because I keep seeing people point at this one as like the only viable way for him to increase his max thing. But like I am curious as to, oh, actually a little visual thing. I don't know if you guys noticed it, but whenever he, like, you could tell when the cutoff is for him being mighty and wimpy. The little indents right here. Yeah, the little indents serve as indicators. That's neat. How much faster is this? This is notably faster, but like it's still not as efficient as, say, carrying things with actually I'm just gonna turn off. Actually, nah, I think auto pause is fine. I don't think this is gonna overshadow a character like Walter, who just doesn't have a movement decrease when carrying the statues. I think this is gonna be useful for placing statues, like specifically where you want them to be. Because I know in my experience, whenever I'm playing Winona, carrying statues is the thing that takes the longest time. So swapping to Wolfgang, who can just carry statues faster, and put them down in a more precise location, I think can serve a purpose, right? I think that's fine. So I think that changes incredibly niche, I'll say. I don't think there's a scenario in which this is gonna help like terribly in normal gameplay, because I don't think there's gonna be a scenario where I need to carry things faster than I already do without just being able to swap to like Walter to accomplish it. But going back to the patch notes, I guess is what you could call them. Does not lose might while carrying heavy objects. We saw that when we were carrying the thing. His speed no longer changes with his form. Well, actually, I glossed over. Wolfgang is more efficient. Is a more efficient rower when mighty. We can't test this one because, from what I know, it crashes your game whenever you try to. Like, as it currently is in this beta branch, Wolfgang rowing just doesn't work. His speed no longer changes with his forms. This is the big thing that a lot of players are getting caught up on. Because for Wolfgang, right, the way that I had explained it to a few other people is in the form of a graph, which I'll pull up right now. I just gotta find it. So if we look at this graph, right, what I've explained this as is this graph right here, graph A, can be categorized as Wanda. Wanda is a character who people compare to Wolfgang a lot just because they have similar damage outputs, right? But what you have to consider is that Wolfgang is nothing but his damage output, whereas Wanda has a lot of utility that differentiates her from Wolfgang and as well as the rest of the cast. So, in this graph, we see that, like, if we're going by the example of Wanda, she starts off with nothing, and her resources or the things required to build her up are pretty difficult to get unless you like just book it for those things or you get lucky. But once you get those things, her utility increases drastically. So once you get the alarming clock, which is the weapon that a lot of people point to say like, ah, this character is comparable to Wolfgang, then like that increases her utility a bit. Whenever you get things like a backtrack watch or a backstep watch, or even just the reviving thing, all of those things are instances in which her utility and her versatility as a character ends up increasing. we're gonna skip over to graph C, because this is the other character that people compare Wolfgang to, which is Wigfrid. Wigfrid is a character who, by and large, starts off with a lot of her perks, right? Like, there aren't really any barriers to entry, let's say, for what you could use Wigfrid for. She starts off with a natural damage absorption. She deals more damage. She deals slightly more damage. Whenever she attacks things, she regains health and she regains her sanity. So what this entails, right, is just a steady flow, right? It's just the character is about as good as they're gonna get out of the box, but there's some things here and there that can influence her utility, right? So if you're playing with more people, like if you're in a team, this bar ends up going up because she can provide different buffs and she can provide different tools to her team, which, like, for the most part remains constant. I don't think there is many scenarios where once you have those things, they end up like being lost over time, right? There isn't really anything that can outclass them because they're in like a category of their own. Now, the big thing that I've seen complain about this graph, right, is Wigfrid, because Wigfrid's utility ends up like bumping up and then going steady, and then like bumping up slightly more and going steady, but for the most part it's just like consistently steady in terms of her utility all the way through. Now, Wolfgang is chart B. Wolfgang is a character who a lot of people play in like a rushing boss kind of way, right? If you look at that video that I uploaded, right? Or the idea behind what I'm saying is Wolfgang starts off being able to just join a random server, right? Which is what happens here. He gets himself through the early game by getting like the bare minimum he needs in order to set up for specifically getting a bit of armor, getting a bit of healing items of some sort. Like in this run, I did blue mushrooms just because it was like the easiest to get. And then I continued to go and beat Dragonfly, right? Which is how a solid chunk of Wolfgang players end up playing the game. They end up getting the resources that they need, going for whatever boss they're trying to kill. In this case, it's Dragonfly. And they kill the character early on. Like, they kill the boss early on, get all their loot, have access to all that fun stuff. But once you do that, what are you really left with in terms of Wolfgang's utility? The argument that I would make is not much, because fighting bosses and combat is something that you focus on like pretty early on, and then you don't really think about it afterwards, right? You clear the bosses, and then you start realizing as you continue playing the character that he just doesn't have as much utility as a character like Wanda does over time, or a character like Wigfrid has over time. Like, a lot of characters just end up outclassing him in the late game because they could accomplish what he does with similar amount of resources, if not like more. But at the same time, a lot of them have ways to get those resources and amass a large quantity of them to offset that cost. So overall, I think Wolfgang steadily gets worse and worse in comparison to other characters who might get better and better, like Wanda. So I think nerfing him in speed, specifically, not only lowers this, right? It doesn't just lower the starting position of how good he is. It also decreases like the trend, because a big thing is like, oh well, you could get from point A to point B faster in order to like just do whatever it is you need to do in whatever scenario you need to do it. Like that's the biggest thing that I think speaks to Wolfgang's versatility. But you know, at the same time, like, what versatility? Like, all he had going for him was speed, and then they removed it. Like, that's what I'm of the opinion of. Wolfgang can be considered a swap character if you just want a lot of damage from bosses. Yeah, exactly. I think people who play Wolfgang, no, people who don't play Wolfgang can treat him as a swap character, and a lot of them do, which is, I think, where a lot of the, I guess, complaints, I don't really think of them as complaints, but, you know, it's the only word that comes to my mind right now. The biggest complaints about, like, oh, Wolfgang's OP is that people swap to him to kill bosses, and they say, wow, this character has a lot of damage, and then they don't play him afterwards. They just swap back to whatever character they were originally playing. So that kind of skews it. Like, it skews people's visions of how good the character actually is because they are using him only for the one thing he is hyper specialized at, while ignoring all of, like, the lackluster side things that Wolfgang has in comparison to other characters. I really think that removing the speed and, like, not taking into account his lacking in other fields when compared to other characters, just kind of, like, to me at least, the comparison that I always make is in relation to Melee, right? Super Smash Brothers Melee. A lot of memes that people, no, a lot of things that people say and a lot of thoughts that people have about the game are usually derived from memes from the character, right? A lot of people that make those jokes and, like, have the ideas in their head that they do, don't really dive into Super Smash Bros. Melee to any, like, real deep degree. And I think that's similar to Wolfgang, because people swap to him, kill a boss, swap back, and they don't realize, like, the other side of Wolfgang. Like, the primary use of Wolfgang is to go kill bosses. Like, that is what he is good for. And once he does that, he's just not really a great option, because, like, other characters do the same thing, but, like, better in the long run. Anyways, Wolfgang's hunger and health are now at max 200 regardless of form. Wolfgang takes 25% sanity penalty. I think his decrease in health and hunger is fine. I don't think many people are complaining about that, but, like, I still think it should be up in the air as to whether or not this is required, but I'll get into that later, because I want to speak to that a bit, right? I want to speak to the idea of, like, whether or not the changes are required. So Wolfgang now takes 25% sanity penalty from the dark and from shadow creatures, but if he is in range of other survivors, that penalty falls back. I think this is interesting. I think that Wolfgang having more of a penalty when it comes to the sanity reduction, I think that's interesting, but at the same time, sanity is something that is so easily, like, recovered, just due to the various options that there are in order to regain it or deplete it, that I don't think this matters all too much. I think a more interesting thing would have probably been to make him take more damage from shadow creatures, right? Yeah, I think it's a buff. The easier you could influence sanity makes farming nightmare creatures a lot easier or harder, depending on the character. Like, a big complaint that I see people with Wigford have is, how am I supposed to farm nightmare fuel efficiently if every time I kill a shadow creature, I'm put above that threshold where I can't get nightmare creatures? So, like, ultimately, that just makes farming for nightmare fuel that much harder as the character. Whereas Wolfgang, right now, is the opposite. He can just dip in and out whenever he wants because of how easily influenced things like sanity is. So, you know, you could recover it with, like, cooked cactus, green caps, the Tam O'Shanter, which is, like, the biggest one. Like, there's so many options to recover sanity that I don't think this is a big issue. Like, honestly, this can be taken in a way to where you would think this is more of a buff than a nerf. He deals more damage when mighty and less when wimpy. Also takes extra damage in wimpy form. I think this speaks to what I was talking about earlier, where there is no reason for you to be wimpy anymore. Which I see a few people bring up, like, possible solutions for that, but overall I haven't heard anything that doesn't feel out of place. you know? Because I think being wimpy should be bad, right? I don't think that it's desirable to be wimpy, but I think not having a positive trait attributed to being wimpy at all, I think it's kind of I think it's kind of bad. Because, like, now it's just mightiness is something that you have to constantly maintain regardless of time, right? Which I think can be annoying. Like, overall, I think there's no reason for it to be there, or no reason for you to be wimpy, so you just have to constantly be monitoring it, which, like, over time is going to end up being tedious. So I don't really like that. Let's see. Wolfgang can build a gym station structure. This is... When I saw this, I was pissed. So for those of you who don't know, right, let's go ahead and make all of this stuff. Go ahead and make all of the Wolfgang things real quick. How much... I did enable geometric placement. I didn't need to. But something that I wanted to test was... How big is this? So, right here we crafted a few things, right? Let's go ahead and load the gym. So, like, what this does is this plays a little mini game, right? What the fuck? Load the gym. Load the gym. Enter the mighty gym. Oh, okay, it is spacebar. Ugh, they really just said play Dead by Daylight, huh? Oh, it doesn't show it for other characters, which is a little unfortunate. Yeah, the gym is the most effective way to regain your might, right? If you're gonna get mighty form, what you want to do is use the gym. So overall, I think that's fine. I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with the gym being the best, most efficient way to get your mightiness meter up. I'm just gonna call it might. I don't know if that's what other people call it or not. I'm assuming it is because, like, that's the one that makes the most sense, at least to me. So here's the biggest issue that I have with it. I'm not a big fan of character-specific structures if they don't have a use for other characters. That goes for items too, for the most part. Like, I've been complaining about this pretty frequently in the Don't Starve Together Discord. And when I explain my thought process behind it, a lot of people seem to agree with me that character-specific items and structures would be a lot more interesting if they were usable by other characters. But if the character who can craft them and who they are meant for could get another, like, an additional effect to it, right? So the best example that I always bring up is Bernie. For those of you who don't know, Bernie, the Willow item, Bernie is an item that distracts nightmare creatures for you, right? When he sits there, he's just like lovable bear. He dances for you, all that fun stuff. And by and large, like, he's just nice to have around, right? Like, I don't think anybody's gonna actively complain about having a Bernie around. With that being said, his real appeal comes from when Willow is nearby, right? When the character who makes him and who gets the maximum use out of him is near him. And then he becomes Bernie, but, like, with an exclamation point. Now, this one is basically just like your own personal mini boss. So what that entails is, like, he's just better. By and large, he's just a better version with Willow being present than he is with Willow not being present. But the biggest difference is that he still has a use to those other people who do not play Bernie or who do not play Willow. I think that's the best example of a character getting more mileage out of their item than a different character, but that item still having a use for other people. I think that's what Clay should be gearing their character-specific items and structures towards. I think it should be more like Bernie and less than a character like Winona, who has no reason to be played after she drops her structures down. Or Worley, who has completely useless structures without him being in their immediate vicinity. Like, they're useless to other characters because they just can't use them. Which I think, and a lot of other people think, is a lot worse than the alternative of other characters being able to use it, but to a lesser degree. So, you know, that's the biggest issue I have with Wolfgang's gym and his dumbbells and, like, those character-specific structures. I do see a lot of people talk about it and say, like, other characters should be able to use the gym. To which I say, yes, but what I think would be even more interesting is different emphases being put on different characters. So a character like Wigfrid would be able to use the gym in order to get a damage increase, whereas a character like Wickerbottom or I guess WX or Wormwood would be able to work out in order to get a speed boost. Like, I think having different uses for the same structures dependent on the character would be incredibly interesting. So I think that's something that Clay could, I'm not going to say easily do, but I think that's something that Clay can do in order to make the structures more team-oriented as well as just more interesting for each player. And then Wolfgang can craft the dumbbell items or sort of might not go, blah, blah, blah. So here's the biggest thing about the dumbbells, right? My biggest issue is that the ingredients, but that's because I'm somebody who plays Winona. So having more uses for more people who use rocks, right? Right here we got the standard dumbbell, right? Then we got the gold dumbbell, and then we got the gem bell. So the biggest difference is their utility in terms of how much might you get per its durability, as well as like how long it takes. So this one, as you can see, takes quite a bit to restore a solid amount of might. The gold dumbbell takes like a bit less time, like it's a little faster, but it's still relatively slow all things considered, right? The damage also varies between the two, but if you notice, it's kind of slow for a damaging weapon. Its only real appeal is that it's used as a projectile. The animation is also just really funny. But the gem bell is easily the best one because it that thing shoots up. Like, it's insane how much faster it is to use the gem bell than it is to the other. Honestly, that's an interesting thing. If the degree to which you gain the things from the dumbbells, right? So like this dumbbell, if you were to use it as Wimpy, what Shady says is its effectiveness would increase as it's Wimpy. Low is 0.3, medium is 0.9, and the high is 1.9. That's interesting. I think adding different utility for the weight of the dumbbell is honestly a nice touch. I appreciate that. But like, overall, I think the one that you really want to go for and the one that you constantly need to get in order to make this like as good as people would want it to be is just go for this dumbbell. And even then, using it as a weapon as like is kind of intended. Using it as a weapon is kind of ineffective just because it's a projectile, right? It has quite the bit of wind up. You can't like constantly be throwing it, but I guess it has AoE, which is fine. But you're gonna have a really hard time hitting a moving target just due to the fact that like, well, what the fuck am I supposed to do about this, right? If I'm fighting bees, I gotta time the hit so that I don't miss. Like, you gotta lead your shot a little bit, which does provide a little bit of skill. Like, I'll say that about it. But I think in terms of practicality, I don't see the dumbbells being used as an effective weapon, especially because you have to constantly be chucking it, going, picking it up, and then doing the same thing over and over again. The damage also isn't astounding, which is meh, and throwing them does use durability, so overall I think it's strictly better as a portable gym. But you know, I digress. Going back to the patch notes. Actually, that's it. That's they released this, and as you could imagine, a lot of people, and I mean a lot of people, were not too happy about it. It's like, Wigfrid will be the new Wolfgang. This person just happy that they predicted it. I think these sprites are a lot better. I'm just gonna say it. I think this, in comparison to where is it, like the standard dumbbell, like this thing, yeah, I think there is no competition. This one does not look as good. It's literally just two circles and a rectangle, dude. I can make a wiener out of this. Like, what? I think the gem bell looks great, though. I will say that. I like the design of the gem bell. Like, people were really upset about this. People were either worried, they were either upset. Like, this, people are like, and it's not as exciting as I hoped for, but like, you know, whatever. No, just like, meh. But it was so bad that people are still talking about it, myself included, to this day. Like, this was announced a few days ago, and people were like, bro, they're just constantly arguing over what they think is the best. Hey, look, it's me. Over what they think is the best course of action, given the information that we've gotten. It's gotten so bad, in fact, that Clay has resorted doing something that they have never done for any prior rework. And that is, as one can see from this stream and the bits and pieces that I showed, they decided to put out a testing branch so that we can get your feedback after actually having played the refresh, rather than reacting to speculative feedback. I think that speaks volumes to how controversial this was as a refresh. People were out here like up in arms about it. They were complaining all the time. They were like, bro, Wolfgang is disgustingly bad now. He is so much worse. And those claims aren't ill-founded. Because if you look through all of the notes, some of the things he got just don't really matter. Carrying statues faster, rowing boats faster, those are useful in like 2 scenarios. I don't think that it's going to be something that is impactful to most players. We'll need some time to evaluate the feedback that we received before making adjustments, but we wanted to give you some time over the weekend to check it out. So I definitely think that that was the smart play. I think that letting people try it out and make decisions based off of the solid facts is great. People are still complaining about it, even given what they have. But now a lot of it is grounded in what we know. Now, here's something that I said, right? Because I took this time to go onto the forums myself, which I have never done prior to this point. I had heard various horror stories regarding how bad the thing is, how bad the forums are. Because like I have pretty strong opinions about this, right? If what I've been talking about is any indicator to go by, such as like my thoughts on character-specific structures, for example. That's something that I talk about pretty often. It's a complaint that I have, and like, I think, given the complaints that we currently have, right? Given the chance that we have to provide the feedback, I figured I'll just toss my hat in the ring. So, the biggest thing is that I keep seeing people throw around phrases like balancing and meta in regards to the changes that they made. But people keep saying things like, well, these changes were pretty necessary. They, like, they're things that I understand why they changed, because as it was, the character was incredibly unbalanced, right? The character was just too good for their own use, or for their own good. Character was, like, needed to be nerfed, all that fun stuff. And so I brought up the idea that what does it matter? Like, what concept do you have about the meta in this game, as well as, like, what you should be balancing around? Because something that Wolfgang players specifically, right, something that they've made pretty clear is that they enjoy the way they're played, right? They enjoy the how quickly it is to get their things. They enjoy how quickly it is to kill bosses with, like, the minimum possible requirements. And I think that's something that should be respected, right? Like, I'm not gonna bash people on how they play the game, because everyone plays the game differently. Having to define the meta in this scenario, because people keep bringing it up, is something that I think is important. I think if you're talking about specifically hyper-specialization of combat, as Wolfgang was, then yeah, he's a little busted. You know, he has access to double damage. No other character can boast that. His attacking speed is standard, which is, like, still pretty good. And it's pretty easy to get those benefits. However, in most every other regard, Wolfgang is average to worse, because a lot of characters have things to offset their long-term deterioration, right? Winona has her catapults, where it has the expansion of a Mermtown. I was gonna say Wickerbottom. I guess Wickerbottom also has her books, which allows for a lot of interesting farms with their tentacles, as well as a lot more capacity, I guess. A lot more of a capacity to gather a large quantity of resources. And I think that's cool, right? I think by and large, I think that's something that can be appreciated. The biggest issue is people don't take that into account whenever they complain about how good the character is. Because they see, he has big damage, big hits, therefore he's busted. Hold on, I'm gonna hide this one real quick. I'm gonna hide this one. Which, like, to an extent I understand, given the perspective of, like, well, this character hyper specializes in one big field, so we should, like, tweak and adjust things in order to mitigate that a little. I understand that as a concept, right? I understand the sentiment behind it. The big issue, right, that I see is this update has so far only targeted those few people who do speedruns of killing bosses. I think that's pretty safe to say, because if you look at it, right, requiring things such as this structure, like this being the most effective way to get might, as well as dumbbells being, like, the only other alternative. What this impacts the most is people who play the game in a way where they speedrun bosses. But, like, by and large, the only people it really impacts is those people who do speedruns for bosses. And I think that's kind of bad. And the reason I say this is because it's not like that was how people had to play the game, nor was it something that was, like, needing to be nerfed. Because by and large, the people who did it played, one, alone, two, they did it in a way where they would, like, play for the incredibly short term and then just not continue, and three, it provided a big boost to Wolfgang's utility because it provided those options for him. Now, what this does is it drastically reduces how viable of an option that is, just because this is the most effective way to increase your might. The dumbbell is the cheapest way, but it is also just arbitrarily incredibly slow. Like, look at this. Like, imagine doing a speedrun and then having to do this, and this being the only way to increase your might. Like, that just is so lame. On the other hand, if you're playing for the long term, if you're playing for the sake of, like, making a base, eventually killing a few bosses, eventually, like, doing Fuel Lever, eventually doing all of this stuff, you're not really gonna mind the changes all too much. You're gonna look at them and be like, ah, well, like, down the line, I'll make a gem bell, and, you know, I'll get all the benefits from that. They don't really see how much of a hindrance that things like this early on present. Which I think is where the community is kind of fractured when it comes to the Wolfgang rework. Because if you look at it from the perspective of a lot of other people, a lot of people who do take the time to, like, go through the game, build up a base, kill a few bosses down the line, then they don't really mind all the changes. They don't see a lot of the impacts that this has for those other people who do speedrun bosses. So, with all that being said, the idea that I brought up is, what is this rework for? Who exactly is this targeting? Like, what exactly does it mean that they are changing the character in this way? And the idea behind it is, they are doing nothing, basically nothing at least, for everybody else, for the casual Wolfgangs, right? Because casual Wolfgangs are gonna play the character the exact same way, except now, instead of just eating, they're gonna have to make these structures for little to no reason. They're gonna have to make these structures for little to no reason, other than just to make them. Which I think in concept is fine. I think having that extra... I don't know, what would the word be for it? That extra step for just casual players is fine. Like, I think people, by and large, wouldn't mind it, given how effective it is, with all of the structures that you need, and, like, all of that fun stuff. But to the people who time is of the essence, I gotta kill Dragonfly as fast as I can, like I showed off in that prior video that I mentioned, the video on my YouTube, the one where it's like, Dragonfly Wolfgang, you know, that one. Those people are gonna feel that impact of having to make these significantly more than anybody else is going to, and it feels like that was a little bit intentional. Balancing around the people, like the small amount of people who rush those bosses, I don't think is healthy for the game. I think it ultimately just hinders a group of people who choose to go out of their way to kill the bosses as soon as they possibly can, and who choose to just try to do things as effectively as they can with the characters that they can. I think discouraging that is kind of lame. The comparison that I've been making, which I think is a pretty apt one, is Super Smash Bros. Melee to Super Smash Bros. Brawl. Because the average, like, casual Super Smash Bros. Melee player, right, the little Timmy who got a GameCube with Super Smash Bros. Melee for Christmas, he isn't gonna see all of this crazy things, like wave dashing, L canceling, like all this advanced tech in this game is just gonna be something that he doesn't have to worry about. And what ended up happening in the example of Super Smash Brothers is Brawl came out, which was the successor to Melee. And what Brawl was just an incredibly watered down and a lot more of a slower game than its predecessor, Super Smash Bros. Melee. And a lot of casual fans really liked Brawl, but a lot of competitive players just really hated it. Like, the characters were really unbalanced, the gameplay was really slow, it just had a ton of issues. But the thing is, little Timmy, who liked Brawl, still liked Super Smash Bros. Melee. Because he wasn't exposed to that competitive side of it. Like, that wasn't something that he had to worry about. It wasn't a factor for him. And I think there's a similar thing that can be said about Wolfgang. Little Timmy playing Wolfgang in this scenario, right, is going to play Wolfgang in a way where he's not going to have to or want to care about people speedrunning with the character. I don't think that balancing it so that it only hinders this one group of people and does little to nothing for this other group of people is the way to go. And I think that's what a lot of people are getting hung up on. So, all of that being said, what I had posted a while ago was because I was kind of lurking around, right? I was talking to a few people about it. I was discussing it back and forth. I was listening in to people who liked the rework and people who didn't like the rework. I was weighing all of these things. I was thinking like, well, if I were a game dev and I was the one in charge of this, what would I do in order to benefit everybody? So I compiled like a pretty big list of the problems that I've seen with it, as well as the benefit and like the possible solutions. So I outline it in this post, right? I've compiled a few problems as well as solutions to what I've seen people complain about, and things like Don't Starve Together Discord and the forums, and you know, I got a few solutions. Now the problem that I outlined, right? The problem that I see a lot of people talk about, the problem I see a lot of people have, is that barrier to might entry. And what that means, right, is making these structures, making the dumbbells, A, take as long as they do to get, and B, take as long as they do to use, ultimately just hinders that one group of people. Like I said before, it just hinders competitive players instead of little Timmy. So I think balancing it around competitive players might not be the best solution in this regard. So the solutions that I give is give them an alternative, right? Give them an extra way to become mighty. What I outlined was when Wolfgang is at or above 75% hunger. So in this scenario, right, he has 200 max hunger, so that would be like at 165. I feel stupid for not knowing what 75% of what 200 is off the top of my head. It's 150, right? If he is at or above 150, then what could happen is his might would progressively increase. So like, as you're getting set up for rushing B Queen, if you're a competitive player, then what you're going to do is you're just gonna like go about your business while keeping an eye on that hunger. That ends up causing you to shift a bit of priorities, right? It makes you maintain your hunger, like keeping track of that while you're getting everything set up. So I think that is a way that isn't too intrusive, but still nerfs it somewhat. It's not to an extent where it's an issue, but it's to an extent where like it's something that you would have to maintain if you were to play in the way that you would have to play. If if you're trying to rush things. If you're trying to rush things, you would have to constantly maintain it in order to get your might to gradually increase. A lot of people who I talked to who were in favor of this rework, who thought that it was necessary to some degree, they didn't mind that change. Like when I talked to them about it, they were like, yeah, I could see that happening. Like, I don't see anything all too intrusive about it, because like working out is still going to be the preferred way to go about doing things. Working out is still going to be optimal. It's still going to be the best way to increase your might. But having that additional barrier gone, having that little bit of a boost for people who want to play in the way that competitive, I keep saying competitive Wolfgang players, but like, you know, speedrunning, rushing players, encouraging them, like if they want to play that way, then they're going to have to work for it a little bit more, rather than just stuffing your face full. Making the craftables not entirely required is like a pretty good idea. Incentivizing them is fine, but making it the only way to do it is where people have the issue. At least in my experience, whenever I talk to people about it, that is the biggest thing that people have. Like, that's the biggest problem people have. Another thing that I proposed was the possibility of whenever you reach your hunger cap, any excess hunger points that you get can be transferred into the might meter, but like at a lesser rate, right? At a reduced conversion rate is the word I use, just to make it like not just base game Wolfgang, not just original Wolfgang, because if it was too good, then people would do nothing but that. And like I think that's the biggest concern that Clay has whenever people talk about like reworking this character, tweaking this character. They don't want Wolfgang to be played the exact same way that he was prior. So having a more of an incentive to work out rather than more of an incentive to just constantly stuff your face would be interesting. Now, in regards to this, right, this is kind of like in relation to that. Wolfgang can access a soft mighty form when certain conditions regarding his hunger are met, where he gains some benefit to might and not others. This is under the idea that you can revert his health penalty, right? Because he got minus effectively 100 health when mighty. So if you gain might by just stuffing your face, then like maybe your health can stay at 200. But you still get the double damage, and like maybe you don't get the speed boost, but if you work out in order to gain that might, then you do get the speed boost. Like things like that, having a bit of a back and forth in order to balance each other out. Still giving people that option to continue playing the character in a way that they want to, while also incentivizing players to work out, is probably like the best course of action that Clay could take. At least that's what I think, right? This is all through my views and my lens, all that fun stuff. So, you know, make of that what you will. The lack of team play is a huge one that I've seen a lot of Don't Starve players talk about. Because given all that we've seen with current Wolfgang, he's kind of bad. Like, in terms of how good he is at contributing to his team, he does little to nothing for them. While the lack of team play is something I think everybody has issue with. Because Wolfgang was kind of a solo-oriented character. He was a character that was kind of just ported into Don't Starve single player. Well, he was ported from Don't Starve single player to Don't Starve Together. And his perks kind of reflect that. Because, like, he eats all... Like, the big meme about Wolfgang players is they go in, they eat all your food, and then they kill all the bosses alone without you. Which... I understand why people would make that the big meme. I understand why people would think that, but like, his perks are a bit outdated. I think that's the biggest issue that people have. So the proposed solution that a lot of other people made, that like a ton of people have been making, I think this would be one of, if not the most requested feature in this rework, is make other characters be able to use his structures. Now, you might be thinking, like, it's fucking crazy, right? Like, having an additional 2-point something damage for every character would be something that, like, is insane. So what I said to this, right? Maybe what should happen. The problem with that is, like, 2.0 damage is way too good, right? I think that's a little out of the question. Oh, only Mighty Wolfgang can throw things. I see. But other characters being able to use it to the exact same degree would just kind of make Wolfgang a swap character. So what I proposed was like give characters a 1.2 modifier. You might give them a 1.25 modifier to their stats. So that way, whenever they do want to use the gym, it's not like just treating Wolfgang as a swap character. You know, he has utility outside of that. Like, he has a reason to continue playing Wolfgang, which is the biggest issue that Winona has. But, you know, that's besides the point. What I was also proposing, in addition to that, is other characters get different benefits from using the gym. So Wakeford, Winona, Woody can get strength upgrades. Like, maybe the strength upgrade can transfer into Woody, like into his form. Whereas other characters who are a bit more frail, right, like Wickerbottom and Old Wanda and like WX, they could get a speed boost. Like they could just be faster for n amount of time after using the gym. So, you know, it's still something that people want to use and people should be using, but it isn't something that like is specific to Wolfgang or causes him to be a swap character. Like the thing about adding a speed boost to it is it would make sense to keep Wolfgang's speed boost if other characters could get the same thing. And overall, I think if other characters could get the gym, then they would need something to greatly disincentivize just playing Wolfgang as a swap character. Right? I think they fucked up once with Winona. They've been scared about that possibility ever since. And a lot of character-specific reworks, like where they have items and stuff, have reflected that. So, you know, adding an incentive to continue being that character is nothing but a good thing, as far as I'm concerned. Now, on to the next problem. Managing the might meter is seen as an inconvenience, which is true. Even people who do like this rework think that after a while, might ends up being an inconvenience to them, right? It's just something that you have to constantly maintain. It's something that's a little bit of a hassle. You have to go out of your way to do it. And as such, people don't like it. So what I would say that you could do, right, is for Wolfgang, give him that alternative, right? If you give him that alternative, then like there's another option for him to do, so he doesn't have to go to the back to the old grind. He doesn't have to go back into the in this good old scenario where I had released a video of Wolfgang Dragonfly speedruns to the tune of 16 tons. He doesn't have to go back into the coal mine in order to regain his might. Like, I think just adding alternatives would be interesting. Maybe add a few other mini games for you to play so that it doesn't get stale too. Like, just give us fucking Among Us tasks or something. I think that would be fine. But yeah, going on to the next problem, because I feel like managing the meter being seen as an inconvenience is something that you could tweak. Like, giving it an alternative could resolve that. Just adding more variety to what Wolfgang can do would be a good way to resolve that. Like there are a bunch of ways. Clay can do a lot of things, and I've seen what their creative team has done. Like, they've done quite a bit. I feel like making it feel a little less boring is something within their wheelhouse, to say the least. But going on to the next one, the problem. People still think Wolfgang is pretty boring to play. What this speaks to is this idea where Wolfgang is all about go kill boss really quick, and then he has nothing else that makes him interesting aside from bigger number, which, you know, bigger number, better person and all that. Doesn't really matter all too much at a certain point in time. I think that perk gets pretty stale pretty quickly, unless you're like constantly speedrunning it, unless you're constantly trying to optimize it, which is where a lot of other people get their licks from. So what I would recommend is just adding that other factor of team play, right? The solution of the rework should be to make Wolfgang a bit more fun. It should make him feel as though he is refreshing to play, right? Like, as though it's a bit of fresh air. So I think a lot of it, in terms of the rework, right? A lot of the things that they changed, a lot of the items they introduced is a kind of a breath of fresh air. But the execution, I think, is where people are getting caught up on. I think there are a few things that can be changed here and there in order to make the character play a bit better. I think there are a few things that could give people that little oomph, that extra little bit of hype surrounding the character, and add a bit more flavor to him. While giving him a bit more team play would definitely make for a more interesting team composition. I think there's a lot that you could do in terms of trying to make Wolfgang a bit more fun. I don't put it beyond Clay's scope of skill, I guess, in terms of designing the characters, that they could make Wolfgang a little bit more fun in the long term. I've never seen anyone play Wolfgang in a team who wasn't a newish player. At least it's really uncommon. Yeah, exactly. Wolfgang is a character that benefits a lot from that solo play. So giving him more of like a team-oriented play allows him to do even more with a team and allows him to like talk to people even more. But overall, there's a lot that they could do in order to make him a bit more interesting. Like I definitely think team play is one of those things, to say the least. Working out is lame. Like I've seen a lot of people talk shit about working out, which is why I put lame in quotes. But I definitely think working out in and of itself needs a bit more of a variety to it, or the repetition associated with making with the mini games, right? Like just playing what is essentially Dead by Daylight skill check and simulator gets kind of boring after a while. I bring up his form. Okay, so this is something that I personally take issue with because his form is atrocious, right? As somebody who knows the basics of working out, who knows about proper form, I gotta say, I'm gonna tear into him a little here. I'm gonna, like, Wolfgang, what are you doing? Regardless, for those of you who know about working out, Wolfgang goes from a back squat into a power clean press, which is bad. You shouldn't be doing that if you're working out, right? But I go off of that by saying, like, what the fuck is he working out? Like, he's shattering his spine by doing that. So what I think could happen is give him a few extra structures. A hack squat machine for legs, which, like, if you're unfamiliar with what a hack squat machine is, it's those things that you just like push with your legs, right? It's those things that you, where is it? It's these things, the things that you put weight on and then you just push with your legs. It exercises your well, obviously your fucking leg muscles. I'm not gonna get into the specifics just because, like, this isn't a me showing you how to work out video, but like this works out your legs. So having a hack squat machine would be interesting for giving him a speed boost. Just like a workout bench for a bench press to work out with upper body strength, giving him a damage up, things like that. All of this would be interesting to see and could leave more room for a varied, like, mini game loop, right? It allows for more of a variety is what I'm gonna say. Going on, the problem of being a lack of a wimpy form. Provide a use for a wimpy form is the easy solution. People keep saying that, like, you should tie his speed boost into being wimpy, which I don't think should be the case, because, like, those two don't necessarily correlate with one another. And I think just tying speed to wimpy would be like just kind of lame. And I also saw a lot of people using wimpy form for a more tactical approach, because wimpy form prior to the rework would have Wolfgang's stats be lowered, which allows you to be able to heal more per healing item. So, like, it would take less maximum healing points to go down to, like, so for example, let's say you have 100 health, right? You would only need like 2 pierogies and 20 HP worth of healing items in order to reach that full 100 health if you're starting at like 1. Whereas if you're mighty and trying to heal, you would need, like, what is that? It's like 9 pierogies in order to get the full 300, right? In order to get the full 300 HP. So using it for a tactical advantage like that, for players who are, like, well educated and know how the mechanics of the game work, would be an interesting thing. It would also be, like, pretty rewarding for wimpy form. But, like, it would still make wimpy form not particularly desirable. The problem, Wolfgang is too overpowered. Balance him. Once again, I'm not the person to ask about balancing Wolfgang, right? I think he was more or less fine because he was just solely hyper specialized in one field, and that one specific field only. You know, him, like, I even write about it right here, narrowing the view of how good a character is in regards to nothing but their combat capabilities, ignoring the utility of characters like Wickerbottom, Wardley, Woody, Maxwell, Wirt, like all those characters who have different focuses. They focus on gathering things, they get like all of this other fun stuff. And overall, it just like it's just narrowing in on this one thing and then calling him OP because of that one thing he's hyper specialized in. I think that's not great. I think the character could definitely benefit from getting things like, am I fucking this up? Okay, no, there isn't like a one form or the other. I was in wimpy form like in the game, so I wanted to fix that. But hi, what's going on? What is that? Hacks. This is me talking about the Wolfgang rework, right? I'm bringing up potential like fixes that can be done with the issues that people have outlined. But like balancing Wolfgang, I don't think that Wolfgang is inherently unbalanced as a character. I think that he has his uses. I think that a lot of his uses are kind of like drawn up to be better, like more, have more of a utility than they actually do. But you know, that's just me. I understand that other people might have different opinions about the whole thing, and I understand why they might have that opinion. But if you look at Wolfgang throughout the span of the game as a whole, like, combat is only one part of the game. There's still the entire other aspect of maintaining your resources, expanding your base, ensuring that you never die, so on and so forth. So like, just narrowing the view down to one thing is just like not good. It just doesn't do any favors to anybody. But you know, that's that little portion out of the way. The problem, like the last problem, was just me complaining about something that I've always had issues with, which is character-specific structures that I brought up earlier on. But overall, I think there's a lot that Clay can do in order to make Wolfgang a bit more balanced, a bit more fun, and make a lot of people, regardless of playstyle that they choose to take with Wolfgang, appreciate a bit more, and like they would just balance him out a bit more. You know, all that fun stuff, making him more of a contribution to other people's teams, making him more of a challenge for the people who go out of their way to optimize things while still making a character fun. Like, I think all of this is something that can be fun. I think it's all something that can be done pretty easily if they only tweaked a few things here and there. So, you know, that's what my thoughts on the Wolfgang rework are. So I would like to hear everybody else's thoughts and opinions on it, because I do think it's really interesting to discuss character balances, and I have a bunch of ideas, and like I appreciate how other people have a bunch of ideas on how they play the game and like what their thought processes are on it.